Hi, this is Fuad ABASOV, a broker with Right at Home Realty, and this is your monthly real estate statistics. The real estate market in Greater Toronto area seems to be experiencing a period of stability, with home prices remaining virtually unchanged over the past year. The expectation is that the softness will continue through the first half of the current year, followed by a potential market recovery gaining strength in the later part of the year. Several factors are contributing to the current market conditions. Mortgage rates are coming down as banks aim to avoid foreclosing on homes, which could lead to a surplus of properties on their books. Lowering rates might be seen as a more profitable alternative, considering the costs associated with maintaining and selling foreclosed properties. The real estate market in Toronto showed signs of increased activity towards the end of 2023, but it suggested that this higher resale activity needs to persist for several more months before it translates into a rebound in prices. Some homes that were sitting on the market in the fall saw sales in December, indicating a potential shift in dynamics. It is noted that the market is currently quiet, not due to lack of demand, but rather a stalemate between buyers and sellers. Buyers may be holding off in anticipation of price drops, while sellers, not in distress, are not in a rush to sell. The statement suggests a certain level of uncertainty in the market, with buyers and sellers adopting a wait-and-see approach. The question stands whether or not prices will go up. Prices are not expected to come down, but the potential for an upward movement is not explicitly addressed. The overall sentiment is cautiously optimistic, hinting at a possible market recovery in the later part of the year. But the outcome will likely depend on various economic factors, including interest rates and the balance between supply and demand in the real estate market. And now, let's check detached home sales in Toronto and surrounding areas. An average selling price of a detached home in Toronto in December was $1.59 million, 4% decrease compared to December of last year. The amount of new listings have decreased by 11.5%, the amount of sold properties have increased by almost 19%. On average, it takes 32 days for a detached home to be sold in Toronto today. In Vaughan, an average selling price of detached home in December was $1.72 million, 15% decrease compared to December of last year. The amount of new listings went down by 17%. The amount of sold properties increased by 18% compared to December of last year. On average, it takes 34 days for a detached home to be sold in Vaughan today. In Richmond Hill, an average selling price of detached home in December was $1.7 million, $110,000 decrease compared to November, and 9.2% decrease compared to December of last year. The amount of new listings went down by 16%. The amount of sold properties went up by 4%. On average, it takes 38 days for a detached home to be sold in Richmond Hill today. In Mississauga, an average selling price of detached home in December was $1.44 million. It remained unchanged compared to November, but went down by only 2% compared to December of last year. The amount of new listings increased by only 3%. The amount of sold properties, however, increased by 24%. On average, it takes 33 days for a detached home to be sold in Mississauga today. Average selling price of detached home in Markham did not change from November, and it did not change compared to December of last year. The amount of new listings went down compared to last year by 22%. Amount of sold properties also decreased by 17.7%. On average, it takes almost 3 weeks for a detached homes to be sold in Markham today. An average selling price of a detached home in Newmarket compared to November went up and is sitting at $1.37 million. It remained unchanged compared to December of last year. The amount of new listings, however, went down by 20%. The amount of sold properties went up by 44%. On average, it takes 28 days for a detached home to be sold in Newmarket today. In Aurora, an average selling price of detached home in December was $1.64 million, basically unchanged compared to November. However, compared to December of last year, prices went up by 13.5%. The amount of new listings compared to last December went down by 38%. The amount of sold properties remained unchanged. It takes on average 26 days for a detached home to be sold in Aurora today. In Innisfil, we do not see significant changes in prices compared to November. An average selling price of detached home in December was $860,000. Compared to December of last year, it went up by almost 13%. The amount of new listings went down by 53%. The amount of sold properties also went down by 52%. On average, it takes 41 days for a detached home to be sold in Innisfil today. King City average selling price of detached home in December was $2.54 million, almost 60% decrease compared to December of last year. The amount of new listings have increased by 40% compared to the same time last year, and the amount of sold properties went down by 33%. On average, it takes 35 days for a detached home to be sold in King City today. Average selling price of detached home in Bradford was $1.06 million in December, 16% decrease compared to December of last year. The amount of new listings have decreased by 33%. However, amount of sold properties have increased by almost 100% compared to December of last year. On average, it takes 35 days for a detached home to be sold in Bradford today. Average selling price of a detached home in Milton did not really change compared to November and is sitting at $1.24 million, 9% decrease compared to December of last year. The amount of new listings went up by 28% compared to the same period of last year. The amount of sold properties also went up by 16.6%. On average, it takes 39 days for a detached home to be sold in Milton today. In Stoufville, an average selling price of detached home in December was $1.56 million, 12% increase compared to December of last year. The amount of new listings remained unchanged. The amount of sold properties went up by 57%. On average, it takes 1 month for a detached home to be sold in Stoufville today. In Barrie, average selling price of detached home in December went up compared to November and is sitting at $835,000. Just 1% increase compared to December of last year. The amount of new listings went down by 44%. The amount of sold properties also went down by 30%. It takes on average 33 days for a detached home to be sold in Barrie today. It is important to note that the real estate market is influenced by a complex interplay of economic, financial, and social factors. The prediction of future market trends involves inherent uncertainties, and various factors can impact the trajectory of home prices. Monitoring economic indicators, interest rates, and broader market trends will be essential for a more accurate understanding of the evolving real estate landscape in the Greater Toronto Area. If you'd like to receive your own personalized sales report about home sales on your street or in the neighborhood, please call me at 647-801-3401 or email me at sold@fuadhomes.com. Thanks for watching and see you next month.